What are you taking the GRE? Or have you taken it? Didn't take that? How did it go?
You a junior?
I learned.
They recommend that you do it in the summer. That way you don't have class to do it. Because professors get agitated that you didn't take it in the summer and you have to miss their class in semester time. And that way you have more time to, because you can only take it once every month. You can't like retake it the next weekend. So that gives you more time to take it
They
again.
can like see all your scores.
If you choose to send it. You don't send it. You can choose to send them the day of or whenever.
So like if you take it multiple times, they'll only see the ones you have. Can you wait till after you see your scores?
But it costs money.
And a technology specialist for Perelman Center. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the role of occupational therapy and how we can support you as speech therapists in terms of looking at communication devices and switch access and things like that, and talk about some of those combined roles. You met Leanna and her mother, so that kind of gives you an idea of the big scope of what we hope will be a successful intervention with a child who has a pretty significant involvement due to her diagnosis. She has cerebral palsy, and for those individuals, particularly if they don't have a lot of cognitive involvement, they are wonderful candidates for technology. And Leanna started just with very simple single switches when she was really little. Her mother is a tremendous support to make sure that she gets what she needs, and they came up with some just really creative supports for her daughter. I don't know if she was driving her power chair when she came, but she drives a power chair. She uses her communication device, and that has enabled her to participate in school. Of course, that's our ultimate goal, really, is so that people can, and kids can communicate, but can also learn, read, write, and then move along in the system. So we're going to talk about some of that accessibility and kind of the spectrum of it. Some of it you may be knowledgeable about, and some of you may not. The Perelman Center is located over at, we are owned now by Cincinnati Children's Hospital. We used to be owned by United Cerebral Palsy. We were always housed at Children's. We have a regional technology center, so we service Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio. So we see people from all over. I just had an evaluation today from a child from Alaska, which is kind of interesting. So we see people from all over, and we primarily work as teams. So we have OT and speech together working collaboratively, which is really great. We have an early intervention program, a toddler program, and then our technology center sees every age, from a year-old to 99. So we have a broad spectrum of services, and you are welcome at any time if you want to come see an evaluation or look at all of our cool gadgets. We have all kinds of stuff. Here's my friend Doug. He also started with us when he was very young. And the ultimate goal, again, is getting individuals completely independent and using their technology. It's Doug Schoenoff in school. He just graduated this past year. And here's a video of him using his communication device connected to, he gives the answers to his teacher. You ready? And he's using Kurzweil up here on the computer, which is a software program to help support reading and writing. But the goal for Doug was to independently answer his questions. Okay, and I believe he has word power. That's word power, which is a communication page designed by a really smart speech therapist. So my concern for Doug was, how is he going to be able to access his computer or his communication device? This is an Echo, and he
Excellent. Now,
direct selects,
you work
go back and forth with his power chair.
you need one sentence.
But that became pretty fatiguing, so we actually ended up switching over to him using a very small trackball on a tray. So he kind of goes back and forth now.
You would like to
He's starting to have a difficult time kind of reaching all the quadrants of his word power.
Honestly, it's important because
So,
you
and here's pictures of Doug when he was a little boy. Here, he's graduating from the Perlman Center. And here he is now, and he's taking pictures of a conference we had. So we see people across the spectrum. One thing when we really talk about access, and particularly with kids that have a lot of high tone or have a lot of physical disabilities, you really want to think about, if you're going to increase that motor demand on that kid, say you're practicing a brand new page on a communication device, if you're going to increase that motor demand, you're going to want that task to be pretty simple, particularly at first, okay? And the opposite, if you increase the cognitive demand, say he's going to take a scholastic test, well, it's going to be really difficult sometimes for these kids to have all that motor output and that motor demand of using that device, when it's going to be much easier just to use his eyes for a quick response to a very cognitively demanding task, such as testing. So just something to keep in mind when we talk about motor development and motor ability. I'm going to show you a couple of things about that. Here, Jerry, he's getting ready for Halloween, but he was using just very simple picture cards. He was, so that's very easy for him to do. He can identify them very quickly. He doesn't have to use any motor pattern. Here he is using eye gaze. Okay, so that eye gaze may be a much more difficult task for him to do, and he may have many, many more choices on the device versus something very simple. See some more pictures of Jerry in a little bit. So for me as an occupational therapist, it's really important to understand how can we support them in their seating system? How can we get them, the individual who has a lot of motor development and motor planning issues, how can we get them very functional? So we always start with our seating and positioning. And if you go into the school systems, these kids come in their wheelchairs. Maybe they've been on the bus for 45 minutes. I can guarantee you they need to be repositioned or something. But a lot of times wheelchairs are really designed for safe transportation. You've got tons of straps. They have, they're just kind of locked into their chair. Well, that's great for transportation, but that may not be the most functional position for that individual. So as an occupational therapist, one of the things I really want to look at is, seating is an ongoing issue. Seating changes depending on their needs, and there's a functional way to position the child, and there's a position for safety, which I consider kind of transportation. We have these old rules of you had to sit 90, 90, 90. It's like, no, you can't. If you want somebody to use their head and they have a lot of high tone, don't restrict them so much that it's so difficult for them to use their head. Does it always look pretty? Do they always look perfect alignment? No. If they have visual difficulty, they may be lowering their head or moving their head in such a way because of their visual field. So we try to take a lot of that into consideration. It really, positioning really is key to consistent and reliable access. And you will love your OTs in the school systems if you have a good one. Collaborate with them, and your PTs as well. But positioning is where you really need to start. And if you have a child that you're really struggling with in that kind of situation, take a look at what's going on with them physically. Take a couple of steps back and just watch them, observe them. Your observation skills are just going to be key to really understanding how a child moves. You can kind of see, here's one of our program rooms. We have kids in every type of seating. It just depended on the kid. What do they need in order to be able to access their device? Into that. One thing I want to talk about just real briefly with this is obviously there's, what is their range of motion? Do they have adequate support to be active? But vision, we're finding out, is really much more significant than we had originally given consideration to. Cortical visual impairment, if you've ever heard of that, is a very prominent visual issue with children with cerebral palsy. And it's not that they don't have a healthy eye, it's that they only have certain visual fields. So Jerry, who I showed you with his face painting, took us a long time to understand. And he needed to position his head in just the right location for him to see the screen and to use his eye-gaze system. So not every child has visual issues, but it's a much more prominent than we really anticipated or we really knew, even 5 years ago. Just some quick principles of seating. We want to obtain a very stable base of support. All right. If you have a really, like Leanna, did you notice anything about Leanna and how she supported herself? She's very ataxic. She has a lot of what we call dystonia. She moves all over. Did you see anything that you might have noticed of her stabilizing herself? Did she have a tray, or was she using her arm?
Pushing back.
Yep, she uses her arms. She'll extend her arms and she'll get really situated like this. Her eyes are about as big as saucers. And, she positions her head. She stabilizes herself. And that's where she gets her stability. With seating, if she had had a lot of fixed deformities, meaning her spine was very curved and she sits in a very curved position, I may try to use special supports for her to kind of get her into a midline posture and really give her some very good support. But as much as I want to use technology and I love to get my seating stuff out and I love to play around with positioning, what I'm really looking for is the best intervention really is providing the least amount of support that you need to accomplish that job. Okay, just a couple of pictures to look at that. Here's Jerry when he was much younger. He drove a power chair, had a ray. Here he comes in off the bus. And his tone is just everywhere. He's shifted quite a bit. His feet really aren't on the foot plates very much. But he has very little ability to use his head and to get upright, okay? Here's Emily. She's just sitting on a very, non-supportive cushion and her legs just extend out. Well, she's going to struggle to use her hand to use the device. So positioning for her until she can get better supported is she's going to spend a lot of energy to staying in her seat. Okay, so what I did with Jerry is we started to look at, okay, well, let's just give him a better, solid support system. And then I started letting him understand where his balance is, where he can sit, and where let him feel his own body. I think we spend so much time trying to make our kids and our adults who have a lot of physical disability, we want them to look good. We want them to be sitting upright. And we don't give them the opportunity physically. These kids are handled all the time. How often do we just let them, do whatever? So we started giving Jerry that opportunity. Whenever he came in, we took off the tray, we took off the headrest, we took off the arm supports, and we let him start to discover where he was. We did it with Leanna all the time. And finally, Jerry learned where his center was. And it gave him a much better opportunity to control his head, right? He's grown now, but look how old this device is. That's a head mouse there that sits on top. It's like this big, now they're all integrated. That's a Dynavox 3100. They're like archaic now. Anyway, Jerry is playing around with head mouse. You guys know what a head mouse is? I'll get into it in a few minutes, but it's a little reflective dot, and a camera reads that dot, and as you move your head, it moves the cursor. So that's what he's playing around with, and he has no head support. We just gave him a tray for support, and that ended up being a really great solution. Now, we ended up putting the headrest back on, but he had the opportunity to really explore. We use our reflexes often for kids who have different reflex patterns. I'm not going to get into that tonight, but sometimes somebody's trying to hit a switch and they get into a reflexive pattern. A reflexive pattern only means that it's the first level of your brain's ability to respond to a stimulus or something. Okay, as we get older, we learn, and we can we learn. Our brains learn that we don't have to do this to turn our head. But reflexively, children with cerebral palsy who have a lot of brain damage, that's what they do. They may never lose or gain the ability to control that reflex. So for those individuals, we don't want to strap them in and provide all this support, because to get that switch over here, they're going to have to get that reflexive pattern and hit that switch. We're going to have to give them the time to do that. So reflexes can be very important when you're looking at their ability to access a device, or just a single switch. And that's what I mean by using your reflexes for function. This is an older gentleman who has to use his reflexive pattern to get his head in just the right position so he can use a head mouse and run his chair. Again, it doesn't always look pretty. It's not always the best, 90-90, but it's functional. And that's really all I care about. Here's a gentleman who's hitting a single switch who's a traumatic brain injury. And he figured out how to use some reflexive pattern that he's able to just extend his arms, which extends his head. He can switch every time. Single switch activates. He can do linear scanning. He can use a communication device. But look, he's not sitting real pretty, but we allowed him that movement. And it didn't take too long before he really did learn the ability to use that single switch. Muscle tone, as you know, we just kind of went through muscle tone, it really affects your posture. We did go into vision a little bit. In terms of using devices, this is where that whole vision knowledge comes in. So whether or not they can target a very large icon or a much smaller one. As you get familiar with communication devices, you'll know that you can change that in each device. You can change the background to be a black background with yellow squares so that somebody with cortical visual impairment or some other visual impairment may be able to see those icons a lot better. So sizes of buttons, where their field of vision is. I have some people that can only use the upper part of a screen because they can't get their eyes low enough, or they can't target the eye-hand coordination. So sometimes you have to really evaluate, as an occupational therapist, you'll have to really evaluate not only their access, but how can they coordinate their vision and their access. just some visual ideas for you guys, but just, consider the placement of the displays and the controls. You can reduce size, or you can reduce that visual range. I like to take a device and just put colored tape around it, because sometimes all they need is visual guidance. Or if you're doing an ideas board, all you have to do is just put a cardboard around it. Use a cardboard bright color. That may help kind of minimize that visual distraction. We use a lot of that black material. And you probably use it when you make your picture cards for communication. We make these little boards out of just black material, and we use that. We use it also just as a background. So you have a device set up, you can minimize visual distraction by putting this blackboard or black piece of material around. And you think about classrooms. If you go into classrooms, they are crazy packed with all kinds of stuff. And then we're trying to get our kid to use a device, and they're just completely visually distracted. So minimizing that will kind of help visually cue that kid into looking at the device.
And Beth, have you run into, for example, kids that have Hemi field cut, particularly with the electronic devices, you can actually purposely leave sections of blank so that you may actually have active icons here, a blank area, and active icons here if they have a hemianopsia where they don't see anything on the right side. So you can put things sort of left of midline towards the right and left, that way. Or sometimes it might be an upper field cut, so or they might have they can see the upper right quadrant and the lower left quadrant. You can get some really funky field cuts going on, and one of the nice things about the new devices is that you can actually selectively ignore or load certain parts of the field. If you remember, Leanna's mom said that one of the challenges is that she does better with things located in certain areas of her board, and that when they're editing, that's one of their biggest challenges, is that they may get it perfectly right in terms of content, but she's not happy with where it's located, and so then they have to start experimenting with location to make sure that she has the best access.
And that's why understanding that vision, understanding the physical ability to access on a good day and also on a bad day, because they can change. Leanna changes from probably morning to evening. A traumatic brain injury, their eye focus, their visual deficits are very different than somebody with cerebral palsy. The other thing is just visual distraction for somebody who has any kind of autism or distractibility. You don't have to fill every single square. If you have an 18 location page, you may only have half of those filled. And that helps with ease of access for somebody that's doing even direct access, which is what we're showing these individuals with. Or you build on their skills. You start with a very small number of things, but the same number, and you just kind of can hide a lot of the different squares, and then just keep building on their ability to use more and more. But it's amazing at this point what you can do with the devices and how we can better serve and address some of the complication where before, they have a page, they have to get used to it, or we get the old cardboard out and do our own cutting and doing adaptations that way. There's a lot of different ways to access. Are you guys familiar with the term direct access? So what do you think head mouse is? Good question. Keep that in mind. Okay, so here's my little friend here, and this is kind of what I was talking about. We purposely placed the icons so that he could target, he could visually see them, and it made sense to him. But this is direct access. Now these are key guards. Are you familiar with key guards? Here's another older device, and again, another key guard. All right, you use key guards for targeting, but you also use key guards for individuals that need to rest their hand. Maybe they're fatigued. Maybe they have to roll their hand across. There's a lot of reasons that you use key guards. But he's at, we take some of the kids out in the community, so he's ordering his own lunch. Okay, assisted direct access can include your head devices, hand splints. Okay, so anything that's assisting that hand to access is called assisted direct access. Do you guys know what a mobile arm support is? Okay, it's right up here, pictured up here. Mobile arm support can help somebody who has extreme weakness, such as with spinal muscle atrophy or hemiplegic, somebody with just decreased strength, ALS, different things. But it kind of helps hold your arm up against gravity, and then it allows you movement in one plane. I really like it for like MS patients. We use a lot of those for computer access, but also for communication devices. I've been using a lot of mobile arm supports because it seems like everybody has an iPad now, and they don't want a communication device, they want an iPad. You know? So an iPad is touch only, pretty much. You can do scanning now, but the design of the iPad and all the tablets is really to directly access that. So sometimes I can get somebody's arm supported with a mobile arm support, and they are suddenly able to use a simple device such as a tablet.
Is this one using skateboard?
Exactly, very similar.
Yeah.
There's one
An
called
OT
Rexon.
skateboard.
Yeah.
I don't need skateboard.
It just gives them a lot of movement and eliminates some of that gravity. Okay, so that is a mobile arm support. And then there's all kinds of typing aids, head tracking, pointers. Have you seen the ones that you can wear on your head, the long pointer? Have you seen any of those? We still use them on occasion.
That's old school.
That's old school, but I still have some people that absolutely demand to use their head pointer. So that's a head pointer. And this is just a laser beam. We don't use those anymore, or very infrequently because of the head tracking, the head mouse. So you used to have that, and you'd have a little beam of light. It would the device would recognize that beam of light, and you'd be able to access the device. That's pretty much going away too in new technology. The reason I still keep this slide in here is when I'm trying to teach a kid and an adult who maybe has been newly injured to use their head. You guys know Jill Jump, she's a speech therapist, been around forever. She and I would take a big wall like this, and we'd put all kinds of crazy stuff on the wall. So there was things high, things low, and we would take this, like a headband. You know those little laser lights that you get the tormented cat, things like that? So we'd just take them on and put them on a headband, and we'd have that kid use the biggest gross motor movement that they possibly could to target anything that we can set up. And we would make lots of games and do all kinds of stuff. It is just a wonderful activity to try to get somebody to understand the connection between, oh, I'm moving my head. Oh, this is coming from my head. I'm now accessing something on the wall. And maybe it would be a toy, and then we'd get the toy out, to motivate them. Leanna's mother, when we were first trying eye gaze, she made an eye gaze board. Did she show you a picture of it? it is this big of word power. We still use it. It is humongous. But that gave her the ability to use a really big target and start using her eye gaze. So using very low-end technology to get kids engaged and also just to see their early potential is really a great and inexpensive way to go. You know, you may not have access to all these expensive devices. We're really spoiled at the Perlman Center. But we still have to rely on inexpensive treatment plans for our kids that can be engaging. Let's see. Okay, so tracking using head mouse. The problem with head mouse, we'll get into eye gaze in just a minute, but head mouse does require some graded movement. Have you ever tried it? Have you ever had the opportunity to try head mouse and eye gaze?
Just you try.
I did eye gaze. I didn't do head mouse.
Yeah, we should try to set some of that up. It'll be fun. So head tracking really requires a little bit of graded movement. If somebody is going off center or can't get up to the corner, they sometimes have to, just like you do with your mouse, you have to kind of wiggle it around to get it back to where it belongs. You have to do the same with the head mouse. Okay, so you do need some graded movement, but you don't need a lot of movement. You can adjust the parameters. There's about 3 different styles of head mouse out there right now, and they are all different. So it depends on how much movement the individual has. And then you can have a pause button on your screen that allows you to pause, and then they can converse, you know, visually. They can look at whatever's going on around them or whatever, and then it can stop activating. So that's head tracking. One thing I worry about with head tracking is fatigue. If you think about it, if you're constantly having to move your head, and you're already kind of compromised physically, it can be very fatiguing. If you have ALS, which means you have very little extra endurance, and you're going to be required to move your head to communicate and write long sentences, or try to communicate, say, with your doctor. You know, it can be fatiguing, so that's something you want to take into consideration. You have to have some cognitive ability and comprehension of what you're doing. It's not cause and effect. It's not, oh, I hit that switch and something happens. This is purposeful. You have to have some cognitive ability to understand that your head is moving and you're causing that. You're causing that to happen. It used to be that you had to be plugged into power. The old one that I showed you that was about this big, we used to have to plug that into a power source. So it really limited the ability to make the power wheelchair users mobile. So we have to come up with either alternative power on their power chair, or they always had to be the student near the plug, you know, on the wall. Well, now almost all of our devices are USB powered, so they are very, very portable opportunities now. And typically, you're going to have to use it with the communication device, or if you're a computer user, you're going to have to use it with an on-screen keyboard with something like Dwell. You know what Dwell is? It's the opportunity to have a little menu bar at the top of the computer that allows you to left click, your right click, your click and drag. So if you think about it, you just move your head, and if you have the left click button always activated, whatever you hit, it's going to click. Okay, so that's called Dwell software, or click and Dwell software. Here's an example of an on-screen keyboard. Most of them have word prediction, so it helps speed up that writing. You're not using a communication board, but you're using strategies for writing for people who have physical disabilities that are verbal. This is the direction that we'll go using the head mouse, head tracker. This individual is using a a joystick with an on-screen keyboard, separate joystick with an on-screen keyboard.
All of our
It is
computer-
available.
all of our computers in the media stations here have an option and you can have an on-screen keyboard.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Which
great.
was handy because one day I walked into a classroom where the person before me had spilled their coffee.
All
And it
over
was
the
like
keyboard.
a foamy latte, caramel, and it was nasty. I mean, and it was sticking. So I had to unhook it and
It is
then
on-screen.
use the on-screen keyboard. It was not fun.
Used to be only in the accessibility, and even then, they were like really tiny. Now the new Windows 7 and Windows 8, they're actually really nice, free on-screen keyboards. They're great. And they have word prediction. Okay, let's just talk a little bit about switches. What do you guys know about switches?
A lot about it other than that your OT is really going to be what to help you figure it out.
Exactly. So there are a million different kinds of switches. And there's a couple of different categories of switches. There's mechanical switches, and there's also proximity switches. And I'm going to go into both of them. Mechanical switches are what you'll probably see in every school setting. And they will probably a majority of them will look like this one. Big red switch, it's about this big. And schools get that or the one just a little bit smaller, and that's what you get. Well, mechanical switch, all it is that it has a little mono jack, just like your earbuds do. It plugs into something, and a device, your communication device, will have auxiliary mono jacks that you plug in directly to allow a child to hit a switch, and I have some pictures of linear scanning, and allows that device to scan, all right? Switches you often use just for cause and effect to have kids activate a toy. There's a million different kind of toys out there that are switch adapted. But what's the important thing to remember is that there are a million different kind of switches. There are some switches that require hardly any force at all. This is a micronet switch. And you know what spinal muscle atrophy is? They don't often use a lot of communication devices, but they do a lot of computer stuff. But it's a muscle deterioration from birth, and there's
It's
different
similar to
levels.
muscular dystrophy, isn't it?
Yes, but it's much worse because you start out without any muscle ability. If you have spinal muscle atrophy, you never gain any muscle strength. And these kids they're usually incredibly bright. I have lectures just on spinal muscle atrophy. It's a really those kids are so technical. They just love technology. But they need lots of support, and maybe they can only use their fingers, okay? And that's it. Well, they can't hit a big switch like that. So we're lucky enough to have these really lightweight switches that take very little movement. Right? This one, on the other hand, is for that cerebral palsy kid that all they can do is just really kick hard. And they really hit really hard. This switch is meant to be stood on. You know, I mean, it is just powerful. You can just hit it time and time and time again. All right? You can have switches this one right up here, that you just squeeze. And you can just have a movement of squeezing. This one is like a wand. You put it on something and you can hit it grossly. So maybe they have just the pattern ability to hit very grossly. Here's a picture of my little friend using a wobble switch. And what we've done with this wobble switch is taken one of those little foam balls and we put it on the end with glue so that the surface is a lot bigger for him. And you can hit it in any direction and it activates. So what you have to figure out as an OT is like, where's the best movement for that individual that's going to be consistent? Their head, their little finger, big leg movement, a foot. Then you can kind of match that with these mechanical switches. And just showing you an example of a little girl hitting the switch so she can activate a toy. You can have idling switches for your ALS individuals that really have very, very limited movement except being able to blink their eyes. You can have breath switches that you just do a little puff. But they're all mechanical switches. They plug into something through a mono jack. The other type of switches is a proximity switch. All right? These require power. They require some kind of power source to activate. Okay? And we use them for driving. If you saw Leanna's chair, she used her head to drive. She used her head to drive, or was her mom driving?
Mom was driving.
She has
She
a head.
wasn't wanting to be here because mom is bored.
Well, yeah. Absolutely, we know. She's so cute. She's funny. She uses a head array, which is that top thing up there, and it has these little sensors in it. So she doesn't have to actually hit that switch. She doesn't have to touch that switch. It just activates. Okay. You can actually control it so that maybe they only have this much head movement. Well, you can make sure that the sensor can be sensed as soon as she gets within this range. Or maybe you want them to go all the way over here. And so you have some control over the range of that sensor. Here's what one looks like. You can use these for communication devices, just like the mechanical switch, but it doesn't require hardly any movement. So maybe you just have this much. Okay? You don't have the ability to really put pressure onto that switch. You just have very limited movement. What else am I going to say about these? The downside is they do need some kind of power source. And they do have little power backup batteries that we get for them. Sometimes if they're already in a power chair, we'll run them through the power chair. You cannot run these off a communication device yet. Not a USB thing that you can plug in. They draw too much power. But other uses of this is I had a guy who had really significant athetoid movement, constantly moving, and we were able to get him to stabilize, holding on to a couple of these little stabilizer bars we put on his tray, and if he just moved slightly, he was fine. But if he had to hit a mechanical switch, he was all over the place. So we learned that we set his device up and he stabilized, and he was so fast at using that switch, and he hardly moved. He just kept it within a range where he had a lot of control. So just another idea that we might think about for access. Fiber optic is just a beam of light. That's these here. That looks like a little beam of light. And all somebody would do is they require power as well, so they're still under the electronic switches. So if a beam of light is coming through here and I do this, I keep breaking the beam, and that activates the switch. Just a different form of that. We come in all sizes as well. And then this is back to just tiny little switches, depending on, these are called trigger switches. These are little cap switches and lever switches. That's a pneumatic. These are back to mechanical. I don't know what I did. But this is a pneumatic sip and puff. Have you ever heard of sip and puff? A lot of quadriplegics will use these. So you sip for, say, a left click, and you puff for a right click. So you can do a lot of different things with just sipping and puffing. We don't use these as much. One of the biggest problems is keeping them clean. But with the head mouse and different other kind of switches in Dwell, the ability to land on something and have it timed has kind of eliminated some of these sip and puff switches. We now have wireless and cordless switches. It used to be that we had to have everything plugged in. Well, now we are able to have a receiver someplace in the room, and you can have up to maybe 15 switches. So you can design an entire activity in a classroom and have different kids have different switches that are just mounted onto their chair. You don't have to set them up. They just kind of, stroll into the room, and they can use that active. This kind of switch allows for the eye blink, chin movement. You can see you just have different things that clip onto an eyeglass and you blink. Okay, I think I've gone over the head mounts a little bit, but you guys have any questions about head mounts and things like that before we go on? This is what, a 3-hour class time? Don't worry, we'll get out of it. The one thing about electronic switches is they are very expensive. A mechanical switch, like most of the ones I showed you, are about $45, $50. Electronic switches, they are about $150. So obviously cost is a consideration, but if that's all they can do, that's great. But the beauty of it, they require no force. I get ahead of myself, I apologize. We already went through this. So any questions about the differences? Yeah.
So when you're using these switches
Huh?
and it's scanning across, do most devices use that well? Or do you just stop switching and pause on it and select it, or how does it actually?
A couple of ways, and actually, I think, those are my next slides. Or they're coming up. Yes and no. You can keep hitting that switch, and it goes through each choice. And when you stop, you double click it, it'll access that button. Or you can hit that switch and it scans through the choices. When you get to the choice, and you know it's coming, you get your switch ready and hit your switch. The timing of that for kids with motor movements such as Leanna, oh, good luck. Because as soon as she gets her hand on it, it's already gone to the next choice. Very, very frustrating. So then the third choice, which is actually a pretty good choice for a lot of kids with motor disabilities, is I'm clicking through my choices. Oh, I like that choice. You use 2 switches. So the second switch selects the one that you want. And a lot of the kids that are even more severely impaired that you don't think cognitively can do things, you let them scan through the choices. It's amazing how often they can learn to stop and hit the other switch. So it's an option.
You emailed me that now there's something on the iPhone. Someone emailed me something on the iPhone that'll use a switch, but it's Bluetooth.
Yes, they're now.
You?
You can now use iPad for. It used to be that the first switch controls that came from the iPad. It's a little device that plugs into the power source of the iPad. Okay, and from there, it sends a wireless signal to a switch, a wireless switch. And it would activate only on apps that were designed to do scanning. So very few apps did that. Well, now the new generation of switch control, and we've been practicing with it, it's been pretty reliable. It scans the choices on your iPad. So now kids can go through and they can pick Facebook or they can pick farm noises or whatever, and then click their choice. So that is new, and so far we've had some pretty good success with that. So it doesn't have to be an app that's designed for scanning, it actually scans the whole page. It's been really great. Just a quick comment on motor planning. Motor planning with switches is usually the hardest thing, like I was kind of explaining. If you've got a kid hitting a switch and they're going to have to motor plan how frequently they hit it, and then they're going to have to motor plan to hit the other switch to activate it. So sometimes do. They need multiple opportunities to hit switches. Some smarty pants speech therapists, they're always speech therapists, and they always dress nice, and they always are working on these really smart projects. OTs, we always come in with like stuff, you know, bags of stuff, and barely, you know, getting our clothes clean, you know. We always joke about OTs and speech therapy. You can always tell the difference. Anyway, I don't have to go into that, but I don't know what I was talking about. Anyway, it's complicated. Speaking of iPads, you probably know that there's tons of communication apps now, and literally everybody comes in with an iPad for their evaluation for a communication device. And although there's wonderful things going on with the iPad, there are still a lot of limitations with an iPad for our physically challenged individuals. They can't use eye gaze. It doesn't grow with the kid. If they're able to maybe use a single switch now, but down the line maybe they can use direct access, or maybe they can use a head mouse. Very, very limited to either touch screen, which is what it was designed for, or using a single switch now. There she is. Eye gaze, I probably don't have to go into too much of that, but eye gaze, everybody thinks that's going to be really easy. You just set it up and they just look. Did she show you how they calibrate and all that kind of stuff? And you sometimes have to frequently calibrate. If you have too much movement, it's actually not very good for eye gaze. We're really looking, in Lannis, she had to learn to be very still in order to have the camera track her eyes. Where the head mouse, it is great for kids that have a lot of movement because it's a little more forgiving, all right? So sometimes that's how we choose which device, which access we're going to use between eye gaze and head mouse. Every communication company now has an eye gaze camera. Actually, there's only about 2 or 3 different camera styles, so many of these manufacturers all have the same camera on their device. But it's really important to understand and to evaluate which camera may be better, which device activates a little bit better. So we'll have all of our eye gaze systems out during an evaluation and have the family or the child or the adult try them. Just quickly with mounts, with switches, you're going to have some kind of ability to mount it. Universal mounts are what we frequently use. A universal mount just has a clamp, and you can easily lock it onto a chair, a bed, a table, anything, and it allows the switch to be velcroed to the top of it, similar to this one here. Sometimes I permanently mount them to the wheelchair so that they're always in the same spot, and then they flip into place. That's a strategy I use, just so they're always in the same location. And then mounts for communication devices. Leanna had a big mount on her chair. What we need is somebody's driving a power chair, they're going to have access to that communication device all the time. That's the goal. So we'll mount it onto the chair so it doesn't limit that individual from driving their chair, stopping, using their device to talk, to converse at school, or to participate in class. So there's a lot of different mounts. This one's a table mount, and these are examples of mounts that we put onto the wheelchair. If they're ambulatory, there's a couple of things that we can use. This is a comm bell. This is a tag-along so that we can put it on somebody's gait trainer or walker. We're real careful about what kind of device we put on these because, if you've got a really expensive device on a walker and a kid comes by and bumps it, it's really not a good strategy. So sometimes those kids will carry that device and not have it on something that's going to get knocked around. And then this is just something that somebody can just pull along and scoot it up. Oh, there's the universal arm. you will see these in every school, and we've seen these. This is universal. It's great. It actually comes in the camera industry, and it allows you to loosen a knob. You can move it in just about any kind of dimension or plane. You get it right where you want it, turn the knob, and it locks it into place. It's a universal mount. You will see them all over schools. They clamp on. They're very durable. Okay, so just real briefly, because you asked about the scanning, we won't go too much into this today, but direct selection, we kind of went over a little bit. But with your communication devices, remember that you're trying to get them not only to communicate, but you want them to use it also as a writing tool, all right? So however your individual is going to use their device in terms of communicating, that's probably how they're going to also learn to write. So most devices are easily connected into your computer just by USB cable, so that whenever they're typing or writing, it goes right into a Word document and then you can print it out. So be thinking about that when you are addressing that with your kids, is that how they talk on their device is also how they're going to write. How they're going to be able to physically access it. Because you can't go set them up for a computer in the school. You got to get everybody involved and committed to using their device for that as well. So you have single switch scanning, right? Linear scanning means it just goes across the line, so you're hitting the switch, and you can have it highlight. When it gets to the selected one, it can either just automatically click, or you can use you can press it again, press the same switch. Circular scanning is you hit a switch, and this keeps moving slowly till it gets to the desired location, and the individual moves their hand off the switch, or the opposite, hits the switch. You go either way. The simplest form is just scanning. Circular scanning is much slower. I don't get into a lot of this. My speech therapist usually does this, but you guys know about row column. So you go across, or you go up and down. You hit your switch, and then it starts going across. You can do it either by a single switch, or you can use two switch. And there's just some pictures of it. You do it by column. Group scanning, you can do big squares of groups. You do automatic, I was talking about, and direct scanning. Do you know about the step scanning is what I was kind of getting with the two. You step through, and I'll show you, what time is it?
We've got, I don't know, probably about 12 minutes.
Okay. I just want to show you a couple of a video where you can kind of get through this. This is just a mouth stick. It's called a joust, so that you can use, a lot of spinal cord individuals use this, but you can hook it up USB to a device or to a computer. That's an individual using his system hooked up to a computer using his quadriplegic, so he only has the ability to move his mouth, period. There's lots of different kind of computer access. Morse code, believe it or not, we still use, and some people are very fast at that. Upcoming technology, these are robotic arms that you can use with a joystick on your power chair that can go and retrieve something. And, they're still a little bit out of reach for every day. They are about $30,000 to $40,000. I'll just show you a couple of, we have a website, and we have primarily put only speech stuff on it. We're working on the mobility stuff, but there's really great videos. What's under video? And it shows you the videos are like about 2-3 minutes long. Did you see Leanna? Did she show you this one? Did she show you this when she was here?
Leanna is a spunky 10-year-old little girl who has cerebral palsy with fluctuating muscle tone. Although she is not able to speak her thoughts verbally, she is very expressive with her face and especially her eyes. Leanna struggled for many years trying to access communication devices with her hands and using switches, but this was very frustrating for her. With the recent advancements in eye access technology, Leanna is now able to access her communication device using just her eyes. The camera on the device picks up the movements of her eyes and will activate when she rests on the target for a specified length of time. Now,
She's
it's
also
not a
using a
problem
single
for Leanna to
switch.
chat with her friends, share
She's
her
in a
most
group,
recent
and
news,
we
or
wanted her to
even
have a
talk
real
back to
quick answer
or
too.
text her
So
mom.
she's using a combination.
Leanna is using a C12 speech-generating device by Toby. She uses it with a CI control module for access. The software used on her device is called the Communicator software. Leanna uses a variety of both pre-programmed and customized page sets, using both picture symbols and text on the buttons.
So you can go online here and look at the different videos. We have some that are much more instructional. Partner-assisted scanning. These are our speech therapists going through strategies for different types of scanning. And they're real good, just little educational tools.
Partner-assisted scanning is
This is
a
Libby, one of our
communication
therapists.
strategy that can be used with people with significant motor or visual impairments. Partner-assisted scanning can be used as a primary communication mode, or it can be used in conjunction with an augmentative communication device. If the communication device is broken or unavailable, or it just doesn't have the appropriate vocabulary, partner-assisted scanning can be used to communicate important wants and needs. So partner-assisted scanning can also be used as a strategy to teach young children how to communicate through the process of scanning. Partner-assisted scanning works by the communication partner scans through choices allowed.
Orange, yellow. When you hear the one you want, I need you to hit your button over here, okay?
And a communicator indicates a positive response. They can indicate a positive response using a facial expression, such as a smile. They can also use a body movement, such as an eye blink or raising one's hand. They can also use a vocalization or a simple voice output device, such as a Big Mac, that's programmed to say, that's the one I want, or yes, that's the one. There are lots of advantages to partner-assisted scanning. First of all, it's often very difficult for someone with motor impairment to time their movements. So partner-assisted scanning can eliminate the timing. Basically, the communication partner can increase or decrease the rate at which they're offering or presenting choices, so that depending on how the communication partner is responding at that particular time. Choices can be presented in a couple of different ways. They can be presented auditorily only.
So Kaden, you told me today you want to play music. Is that right? Yay! So do you want to do
So that's the
drums?
universal arm there. We have
Do
switch
you want
attached
to
to
do
it.
cymbals? Or do you want to do bells? When you hear the one that sounds like fun, I want you to hit your switch and tell me.
They can also be presented auditorily and visually by speaking the choices in addition to pointing to a picture or a picture symbol icon.
Do you want to do red? Orange? Yellow?
And as little Tony learned all of his choices, he knew what was coming.
Blue.
So he had to go through this.
When choices
A
are
lot.
presented by a communication partner, they're first listed through one time without waiting or expecting a response from the communicator. Then they're listed through a second time, this time allowing for a pause so that the communicator has time to respond. It's important to present choices in a consistent sequence so that the communicator expects and anticipates what choice is coming next. When they expect and anticipate what's coming next, they can often get ready for the answer and the communication interaction is more successful. It's important to always offer a way out of the communication sequence. For instance, the choice that the child wants might not be available and the choice is offered by the communication partner. If that's the case, it's important to provide a way out by offering a choice such as none of those or that's not the one I want. Once the partner-assisted scanning technique is mastered, a communicator might move on to a more sophisticated system, such as scanning on a communication device. They may also move on to scanning with a larger number of choices or vocabulary words. When a larger number of choices is presented using partner-assisted scanning, the communication partner first points to
word
words, letters, or picture symbols. Once the group of words is selected by the communicator, each choice is then scanned through by the communication partner until the preferred choice is reached.
Like, thank you for telling me with your body. So you say, I like. Now you know what, this is where we need to do one of those little words.
This is one of our OTs
Remember
working
those little
with
words
set
that
up
Justine's
that
always
came
talking about?
up with between the
Partner
speech
assisted
therapist.
scanning can be an
and the
effective
occupational
communication strategy, especially for families as they explore a more sophisticated communication system for their child.
So anyway, there's several different ones on here. There's things about picture symbols, partner assisted, dynamic displays, language considerations on dynamic displays, access considerations for dynamic displays, and I think there's a couple more on there too. So you can use that as a tool to go in there and kind of see the different
And
different ones, and we're adding a lot more to our.
And-
You guys have any questions today? Feel free to stop over to the Performance Center, not all at once. But we welcome, we have programs going on all the time. So you're welcome to stop by. Thank you.